Welcome to episode number 44 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host, Jason Sayeda. Tonight we are doing our much anticipated baseball season preview. We'll take an in depth look at the Phillies' strengths and weaknesses, how they stack up against the National League East and the National League overall. We'll look at other contenders and pretenders in both leagues. And then pretty sure the guys will pose a few questions for the panel to kind of kick around. And then finally, we will get to our prop bets that will hopefully win everyone some money. So Tommy can't be with us tonight, but I am joined by our other co-host. The first is Jimmy the Chalk. Jim, how are you tonight? Hopefully better than last night, but
I'm here. Hopefully, I can make it through in one piece without killing myself, but we'll see how it goes.
if you need a hazmat suit, Meeker and I do not mind if you want to throw it on. Like whatever would make you feel comfortable is fine with us. But and speaking of our other co-host, he's a guy who's never met a mosh pit he didn't like. It's the one and only Chris Meeker. What's going on, Meeker?
What's up, guys? Getting excited for the Phils and baseball. So I'm excited to talk about that tonight. And hopefully we don't have any more for Chalky before the end of our podcast.
All right,
We see him fade out a little bit.
Yeah, you got a little bionic there with your voice, but yeah. And Meeker, if you have any concussion stories from your mosh pits, you could throw them in too to make maybe make everybody feel comfortable with.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It has happened. It has happened.
We know. All right, guys. So let's get into it. The 2022 Phillies went on an exciting and improbable run in the playoffs, falling just short against the Astros. But they didn't exactly rest on their laurels in the offseason. They only added a guy named Trey Turner, who happens to lead the decade of the 20s in hits. They added a solid number 4 starter in Tawan Walker. And they solidified the bullpen, I think, to the point of probably being like a top 5 bullpen in all of baseball at this point. So, Chalky, what are your thoughts on the 2023 Phillies?
Hey, it's a little different to come into the season having gotten to the playoffs, right? I mean, you were 2 games away from winning the World Series, so it's there was hope at various points over the last couple years, but in the back of the mind was always the disappointment of falling short for one reason or another the year before, and they broke the over decade-long streak of not making the playoffs, got back, and they got better for a couple, the reasons that you just kind of laid out. Starting the season without Harper is going to hurt, but they played a good chunk of the season without him last year, so they're used to it at the very least. But I think this is probably the most optimistic I've been, for the start of the season. It's exciting, but certainly optimistic because now we've seen that they can win and get to the playoffs and win in the playoffs. So there's always that little bit of hesitation for me the last couple of years when they were just kept falling short. It's like, are they actually going to do it? But they've done it. So I think that makes for a much anticipated start to the season coming up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's concerning that Harper will be out. And I did hear something a little concerning. I think it was today where Harper kind of said he kind of brought up the possibility of him not playing the field again this year, which I don't think would be a good thing. I mean, I was definitely looking forward to him getting onto the field and getting one of those bad outfielders into the DH spot at some point. But he didn't sound 100% sure that would happen. So
no, I heard I listened to about 5 minutes of an interview he gave at training today with the reporters, and it was very much focused around. He talked a lot about the hitting. Like, I think Jason Stark said there's a chance he's taking like live batting practice before the end of spring training.
Oh, wow.
Which would be an accelerated, I think, return. Harper certainly wasn't committing to anything quicker. He said it might be before, it might be after the All-Star game. Well, great, it's got to be one or the other if you come back at all. But he got asked a couple times, like, have you talked to anybody else, like non-pitchers that have had this surgery or whatever? And he's like, no, I haven't talked to anybody. Everybody heals different. So that didn't make me feel good. I don't know that I felt bad about it, but he was very non-committal about what he could do in the field this year to what you were saying. So that does one of the points we'll come to when we talk about the team. That's one of my concerns.
Meeker, what do you think?
I'm excited. I mean, I think they're going to play a very exciting brand of baseball with their newfound speed, at shortstop with Trey Turner, having a full year of Marsh in center field instead of just battering the ball like the team they've been maybe for the last couple years and just relying on home runs. And I think the game itself is going to change a lot, without the shift, with the pitch clock. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of these changes that have occurred in baseball and how it's going to affect the game. And look, we're old enough to see that brand of baseball and kind of made me fall in love with the game. I'm not in love with home runs, and guys just swinging for the fences every time they're up at the plate. And, baseball is, what we kind of grew up and what it's graduated to is all about the power game. And I think some of these changes that we're seeing in MLB this year, the Phillies are like kind of equipped, with some of the players that they've added and, just some of the players they already had to be able to play that kind of brand of baseball that we're maybe kind of taking a step back to where it should be. You know what I mean? If that makes sense to you guys. And yeah, I mean, I think, look, everything is always predicated on health, getting Harper back as soon as possible and the pitcher staying healthy and, just their key pieces just producing or maybe outproducing what they did last year to get to the next step. But I think it's a tough division. I think it's going to be a very competitive division. The thing about this year is we have the balanced schedule, right? That's another change in baseball that hasn't been talked about as much, where we don't have to play 19 games against the Braves and the Mets.
Yeah.
So, even though, there's some good teams out west, but I think that might help them as well. But I'm really excited. I think this is, we got a taste of it last year and got much further than any of us thought they would. But now you get addicted to that feeling, and now you want to get back there, and I think they have a good enough team to be able to compete for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you made about the schedule. When I was looking at the over/under wins, first thing I thought of was, okay, you have the Phillies, you have the Mets, you have the Braves. I mean, these are all teams that are quality teams. They're all 90-win teams. But then you think, well, they're going to beat each other up. Well, not necessarily this year now, because I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Phillies are going to play every American League team. Is that correct? Like, I think
every team in baseball.
Yep. So, no more, like you said, playing an overabundance of games against your own division. So that's very helpful for them. So I totally agree. And I'm really excited about Trey Turner, man. I can't tell you, and I'm probably being a little goofy here, but I'm so nervous with him playing in this goofy World Baseball Classic, because all we need is him to get hit on the hand with a pitch or something goofy to happen and him to get hurt. I just can't wait to see him at the top of this lineup with all that firepower behind him, and that's without Harper. So what is it going to be when Harper joins the lineup? Like, I just think the lineup is sick. And Turner, like I said, Turner is just a professional hitter. I mean, you see a couple of his at-bats at spring training. He just sprays the ball around. He's fast. He's going to steal a ton of bases. He's going to score 1 million runs. So I'm really excited. I'm excited. But, they do have some question marks. I think one of them, and, I'll throw it to you guys also, but obviously defensively, right? They got by last year having a poor defense. I mean, let's be frank. I mean, the defense was not good. Now you've brought in Turner, and you have Stott at second base, so it solidifies the middle a little bit. And Marsh, like Meeker said, for the whole season, will kind of help. Up the middle, you're good now, right? You got Real Muto, you got Stott, you got Turner, you got Marsh. But you're still going to struggle on the corners in the outfield. those guys are not good. And then our favorite first baseman, that hasn't changed this year. So, um, what do you guys think as far as any weaknesses you see, or any other strengths other than the lineup? Chalky
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Chalky, you can go.
or
Yeah,
Meeker?
so I
Yeah.
mean, the two weaknesses I had listed were outfield defense without Harper, and up the middle, like you said, I think they'll be fine, especially with Turner. But infield defense, Hoskins, and I'm hoping, Bohm played fairly decent in the playoffs last year, so I'm hoping he can continue that. I'm not going to assume that that's going to happen yet. That could end up being a weakness there if he doesn't start well and then it gets in his head again or something. But I mean, those spots on defense to me are really. I mean, it seems kind of foolish to say it's the only weakness, but I really didn't come up with a whole lot of other stuff. I mean, look, just looking through the stats, I'm like, well, you got they had a bunch of guys that struck out a lot, but like as a team last year, they were like right at the league average. And now you got Turner at the top of the lineup, who's not going to strike out that much, knock on wood, right? I mean, he's like a favorite to lead the league in average in a lot of the places betting, and he's going to get on base. And then, I would certainly expect Castellanos and Stott to, and Bohm to all hopefully hit a little better. I mean, so hopefully they can cut down the strikeouts a little bit. And I'm sure I'm missing something that's fairly obvious that Meeker will touch on, but I couldn't come up with much other than the defense that struck me right now, because I think they're 1 through 4 in the rotation are solid, and the bullpen, I mean, if they're as good as they seem like they might look on paper to what you were saying, I mean, if you get through 5-6 innings with these starters and you can save some of those arms and these bullpens reliable, one thing I didn't check was blown saves, and I know 1-run games, they had a losing record last year, but the bullpen felt like they certainly blew a lot of leads, and if they're not doing that, then those are some wins they'll rack up. A year ago, it definitely would have been a weakness. Now you're kind of thinking it won't be, so I'll stop there and I'll let Meeker jump in.
It's so funny that you're bringing up that point that you just made. When Girardi was the manager and they were like 7, 8 games under 500 before he got fired, they had blown the most leads in the National League at that point. So, the team that won 87 games and got to the World Series was so much of a better team by the end of the year because that kind of got figured out, right? Now you're coming into the season with a bullpen that's intact, who you trust, with all the pieces that we're talking about that they've added, not only in the bullpen, but also, between Turner and Walker. And hopefully those however many games there were in the first half of the season turn into games they don't blow, which maybe you're taking an 87 win team, and if you're improving it, maybe you're making them into a 95 win team, which in turn in this division might be good enough to win the division, but it's certainly going to be good enough to make the playoffs, which is what we're all concerned about. Have some key points of some things, not that much, with weaknesses or just things that I think that they need to do this year in order to be able to get back there. And obviously, there's some ones that we're all going to agree with, and that's of course stay healthy, keep pace while Harper is out. You got to hold serve while Harper is still on the DL, and use this newfound speed, like I talked about at the top of the show. I can see Turner stealing 50 bases, and I can see, not that Stott's fast, but at the bottom of the lineup, I can see him stealing some bases. I can see Marsh with a whole season of him stealing some bases. Make pitchers uncomfortable. I think they can do that with this lineup. Stott moving over to second base. I mean, this is, I don't know if it's big, but he has to be steady at second base. I mean, we have been used to having Gene play there, Segura play there for the last 3 years, and he was pretty steady second baseman. He wasn't outstanding. He wasn't a Gold Glove second baseman, but if Stott can be on that level, I think that would solidify the defense. Wheeler and Nola. I mean, they have to make all their starts. I mean, Nola's pretty durable. Wheeler's had some injury problems, but if those top of the rotation guys win 15 games and make all their starts, they're going to be a real tough team to beat. Suarez and Walker, if they can get to 10 wins each, with 15 at the top of the rotation, I think that's where we need to be with the staff. You mentioned Schwarber and Castellanos have to play at least average defense at the corners. I think the one thing is that with Castellanos, I mean, he doesn't have a terrible arm, but teams are going to take the extra base on him a lot. They're going to test him. And I think that's one thing that without Harper in right field, that might be a little bit of a weakness. And Marsh needs to show that he's an everyday center fielder. I don't know that we know that yet. I think that he's got potential. He's still young. He obviously looks the part, and talks the game that he wants to be, a great player. And I think that he's got potential, but that remains to be seen. So we'll see how that goes. And look, the kids that may be coming up in the rotation, not this year, but along the way, if we have a major injury, we do have a little bit of depth, assuming Painter's okay, assuming Abel might be ready. So if we lose a piece, which, every year someone in the rotation is going to go down for an extended period of time, maybe we don't have to panic, and maybe some of these kids can fill that role during the time that someone's on the DL. But I do believe that Nola and Wheeler are a big key to this season. They have to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think couple points. We'll stay with your latest one. I think, it sounds like Painter is going to be okay, but I think what the diagnosis will be is they need to kind of slow it down with him and be cautious. So, with that being said, you may not see him, right? Maybe you'll see him in September. Maybe you'll see him in, as an August call up or something like that. But I think they're going to take it easy with him. I think Abel is your trade chip, because Dombrowski he's very aggressive, right? And come the trade deadline, I don't know what they're going to need at that point. Doesn't seem like they'll need much at all. Maybe they'll need a fifth starter, right? Maybe they'll need a veteran fifth starter. A guy like a Quintana, obviously you're not going to get him, but he's on the Mets. But a guy like that could give you a solid 5 or 6 innings, has some experience. I think Abel is your trade chip there. I don't think you're going to see him as a Philly much longer. I think he's going to go at the deadline. Your other
I think
point,
injuries might predicate that too.
Right,
because
exactly.
if they're competing and they lose a big piece,
God forbid, Bohm or Stott or somebody gets hurt and you need a third baseman or a second baseman. Yeah. The other point that you made that I think was a good one was about once June rolled around, they stopped blowing leads and they stopped, having issues with the bullpen, and it coincides with your new manager, Rob Thompson. So I think having Thompson for a full year, over Girardi, who obviously Girardi was not doing something right, because once Thompson took over, like I just said, he solidified the bullpen, and then they went on like a 10-game winning streak. And, I think Thompson's that's a huge factor this year, having him for a full year. I think he's a good coach, good manager.
Yeah, that's one thing Meeker is pointing out that I just want to piggyback on. So, like, I was looking at the schedule last year, like how they kind of broke down, and through May, they were by the end of May, they were 8 games under 500. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of August, they had jumped to 15 games over 500. Right? So quick math, that's the 23-game turnaround. That's with Harper getting hurt, and that's with beginning of Wheeler getting hurt in it was August he went on the DL, right? Now, September, it wasn't as bad as other years, but they were about like 11-16 or 17 in September and 3-3 in October. So they didn't finish particularly strong, but they really, that big run they went on when they, promoted Thompson, kind of jump started those middle 3 months. I think they need to start better, because it gives you a little more leeway if you need to take it easy and skip a start here or there in August or September, hoping the guy doesn't get hurt, and like Wheeler kind of did. But, to get behind by 8 games in the first 2 months, under 500 at the very least, I think they need to try to avoid it, but I think they're in a better shape to not fall into that whole, like for everything that you guys have mentioned.
Yeah, I think
Most definitely.
that's key. Absolutely. And I guess piggyback off of that point, let's talk about the other contenders in the National League East. I'll throw it to Meeker. Meeker, who do you think is their main contender? And then just touch briefly on anybody else you think in the National League East that could give them a fight for first place.
I don't think the Phillies are going to win the division. I think the Braves are the better team in the division. With Acuna being healthy this year, having a full year of Strider, they have a deep staff, obviously. It's just, you know, I just think that if you look at the Braves lineup and you want to compare them to the Phillies lineup, I would say, okay, pretty close, especially if Harper's playing and if the Phillies might have a better lineup. But I think if you look at this, yeah, I think if you look at the starters, I mean, even though we have Nola and Wheeler at the top, I think the Braves are a little deeper. And I think it's going to be close. I'm not saying the Braves are going to run away with this division. I certainly don't think that's going to happen. But I think the Braves are a 95 to 100 win team in this division, and I think they'll take the division by a couple games. And I'm going to pick the Phils to finish second. The Mets are a playoff team, but I don't fear them as much as I do the Braves. And I think the biggest reason for that is their two top line starters, Scherzer and Verlander, they're 39 and 42 years old. I have a feeling you're going to see some starts missed by, if not both, by at least one of them. And I think once you get it deeper into their rotation, I'm not as fearful. I mean, the Mets do have a good lineup. There's a lot of power in that lineup. Defensively, they're okay. Their bullpen is, back end of the bullpen is really good, but the front end of their bullpen is not so good. So I think the Phillies are a little bit more of a solid team than the Mets. So I'm going to have the Mets finish third. Look, Miami's no treat to play because they have a really good staff, but they're always going to struggle offensively. They're probably a 500-ish team. So I think they're always going to play in that low salary box, where they're just trying to piece it together and work their minor leagues and try and build from within. They're never really going to be
Don't sleep on that pitching
serious
staff.
contender.
Don't sleep on
their
that
staff is great.
Staff.
Staff is great. I mean, they basically have, the Cy Young Award winners. So, but they traded, right? Then they trade Pablo Lopez in the offseason, so they lost the piece there. But they're still a tough team for the Phillies to play because of that staff, and they always seem to play the Phillies tough. And then of course Washington will round out the division; they'll finish last.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with you. I think the Braves are going to fight with the Phillies. Don't sleep on those Phillies, though. I'm not convinced that they can't win this division. I'm really strong on the Phillies this year, and I'll tell you, I'm a Phillies fan. Maybe I'm a homer, but I'm strong on that team. If their pitching staff could, if their starting staff could do what they need to do, I think they could definitely fight for first place. Chalky, give us your thoughts on the National League East, and then also any other contenders in the National League.
Yeah, I'm in the same order as Meeker. I think with Harper missing potentially half the season, I think that'll be enough that will give Atlanta the division. Atlanta's tough. I mean, look, I think you can certainly argue that the National League East is maybe the top three best division in baseball. I don't think it'll be a shocker to see any three of those teams get to the World Series or win the World Series. And Atlanta, it's just, Atlanta's, I think their depth is a little better in the starting rotation. And then, there's guys like Wright and Soroka who aren't even really like in the rotation necessarily right now, that if they get healthy, they just seem to have an unending supply of arms that just come out of nowhere with that organization. So
I do think they might miss Swanson a little bit, though. He's a really good player.
No, I think they will. But,
Iglesias is their closer. It's okay.
I think the Phillies bullpen is better. I'll give the Phillies the edge on the bullpen for sure. And obviously Atlanta had that gap of after winning all those divisions where they were up and down and not as consistent. But they've lost guys over the years, and I go, 95, 96 doesn't mean anything today, but they always find a way to resupply, restock the cupboards. Like when they get rid of guys, they usually don't go on to bigger and better for the most part, right? And I think their defense is going to be better than the Phillies for sure, at least in the outfield with Acuna and Harris. The other guy whose name I'm drawing a blank on isn't really much, but Rosario, yeah. And I think that the Mets will be a good team. I just don't think they're quite as good as the Phillies, and with those two aging aces on top. I mean, Scherzer's had a dead arm at the end of the year for 2 years in a row now, so if it's any kind of close race, that could cost them some starts. Interesting to see how the pitcher coming over from Japan is going to do. I think he's like slotted as number 3 starter right now.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting. But I would have the same order as Meeker. And back to the schedule, it's actually, in some ways, you don't want to fight against these teams in the division, but they actually, for the first time in a while, last year they had a winning record in the division, and like the Mets beat them up pretty good. They were 5-14 against the Mets, but they did the same thing to Washington. They were 16-3 against Washington, and they played Atlanta pretty even and actually had a winning record against the Marlins for the first time I don't know how many years. So not having Washington could be one of the worst teams in the league. Not seeing them as much could be some easy wins, and they were actually pretty consistent against most of the other teams, except for they were 0-6 against the terrible Cubs and 0-4 against the really bad Rangers. So hopefully they don't play down to other teams this year. But for the rest of the NL, when I'm looking at it, I really don't have anything clever other than the teams that made the playoffs last year. I mean, yeah, maybe Milwaukee finds their way back in, but I mean, to me, it didn't. There weren't any dark horses that jumped out and struck me, and maybe that seems like it's too obvious, but I mean, like Rockies aren't going to be good. Pittsburgh's got a while to go. Maybe the Giants pick it back up. They won the division only 2 years ago, right? So they're not that far back from that, but they've lost a couple guys since then. I wouldn't pick anything other, the whatever it was, what now, 7 playoff teams. I really would have the same as last year if you're just asking me to just make a pick. I could see San Diego winning the West because I think the Dodgers didn't get better, and not that they're throwing this year away, but I think they cleared some money letting Turner go, and they thought they had Lux was going to play that, and now he's out for the year. But they got some young guys, and they're gearing up to go after Ohtani next year if he hits the market. So they got their eyes maybe the next year. They're still going to be good. Obviously, they're still a playoff team, but San Diego might win that division if everybody stays healthy. But other than that, I think it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, we'll go over our prop bets in a little bit, and I'll give you a team that I think is going to sneak into the playoffs that didn't make it last year. But I agree with you. I think the Padres are pretty tough. Like that's a really good team. That lineup rivals the Phillies and might be better than the Phillies lineup. So they are going to be tough, and I think they have a shot to kind of definitely challenge the Braves and the Phillies and the Mets. So, I can't totally discount the Mets. But Meeker, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with most of what you guys said. I didn't come up with a team that was going to make the playoffs this year that's supplant another team. I just agree with you with the Dodgers. I think San Diego is ripe to win that division. I actually think I guess we might get to this in a minute about predictions, but kind of think San Diego might be the best team in the National League. And the Dodgers are, at that point of, rebuilding, not really is the word I want to use, but maybe, like you said, Chalky, they're kind of stepping back a little bit to try and spend some money this offseason. And they've gotten snake bitten a little bit with some injuries here early in spring training. So, yeah, it's probably not going to be the Dodgers' year. If we're talking about some teams that could possibly contend who did not make the playoffs last year, the only team that I can really come up with that might have an outside shot might be the Cubs, because the division's not great. I still think they're a third-place team in the division behind St. Louis and Milwaukee, but they've made some good moves in the offseason. They've added some pieces, and some of their younger pitchers are starting to show that they have some good talent. So towards the end of last year, they were I think above 500 teams. So if that means anything going into 2023, that might be the team you watch for. Other than that, though, I think we're going to see just a little bit of a different order of things with the playoff teams than we did last year, but the same 6 teams, in my opinion.
What do you guys think in the American League? I'll jump in first. I don't see anyone beating the Astros in the American League. I think they're the team to beat again by a long shot. I will give a dark horse team as one of my prop bet teams in a little bit, but I think overall I think the Astros are clearly the team to beat, probably in all of baseball. Chalky.
Yeah, I mean, they would be my team. And when we were going through the NL, I neglected to mention, I think Arizona can improve. I think it's going to be tough to get into the playoffs, and it's, unbalanced schedule, that division. There's teams that have been better, but Arizona they got some good young players. They could get over 74 wins they did last year. But I don't think they're a wild card contending team. But AL, I mean, Houston, they lost Verlander, but they're still good. They're really, really good. I was feeling like it's just time for the Yankees to finally get it done. Rodon's out now for the start of the season, it looks like. Maybe this is the year they put it all together, but that's
to me, the Yankees kind of like every year it's their lineup's unbelievable and their bullpen's great and their starters are big. Now their starters are great. I don't think the lineup's that good at all, other than Judge.
Yeah.
I mean, who else hits in that lineup?
They already got three injuries in their starting rotation in spring training already.
Right.
It's the same old story.
I'm already rethinking that. I'm not taking them to win the AL or the World Series at this point, but they were a team that I was looking at. I was like, it just feels like they've been good enough for long enough that they'll just find a way to win one of these years, kind of like LA did, even though that was a shortened season a couple years ago. My sleeper playoff team in the AL is going to be Baltimore, and they maybe not a clever pick, but they finished 4th in the division, 83 wins last year with, nobody expected them to do that. And they have a lot of good young players that might get some time this year and build on. I could see that. That's a prop bet when we get to that for me, but they might surpass, say, Tampa, who they were only a couple wins behind, and sneak into that final wild card spot this year.
I just don't like when Kyle Gibson's your number one starter.
Well, sure, yes.
Problem.
The pitching is definitely going to be a concern, and that ballpark's not exactly a pitcher-friendly park, right? But they're a scrappy, team, and they were hitting the right buttons last year. Maybe it was a 1-year kind of thing, but they got it. They got the favorite for Rookie of the Year. They got some good young talent. Just a shot I want to take.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Chalky. When I was doing my research for my home run prop bets, I did home runs by ballpark in 2022, and Baltimore wasn't in the top 12.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. But
for opposing players or for
total home runs?
About opposing players, or are we talking about
total home runs in 2022 by ballpark?
Their team.
I think.
The Warriors in the last. They're putting in 81 games out of there.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit there. Say that again. Meeker?
Oh. I was saying that, the Orioles themselves play in that ballpark.
Right.
You hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now. Yeah.
We heard that, yeah.
But no, I mean, when you do ballpark I did top 12 in home runs for 2022. They're not on there. So I hear what you're saying. Baltimore.
They had two guys that went over. One guy hit 33, one guy hit 22, and there was everything was less than 20 on the team last year. So I'm sure that pulls down some is that they didn't have any sluggers. But I'll be interested to see the visiting home splits on that to see if they're dragging it down or it just wasn't. It was kind of across the board. But
then you go to a team like Cincinnati who had the most home runs. Their ballpark had the most, and who did they really have that hit a lot of home runs last year? So I mean, it works both ways. So, but no. So, Meeker, did we get your American League thoughts? I don't think so.
No, I mean, look, it's easy enough to say the Astros are the best team in the American League, and they probably are. But I mean, I can't pick that. I have to be a little bit of a contrarian.
Well, you could.
So
I mean, if they're going to win, they're going to win. I mean, what?
I picked them last year and they won, so I was right last year. I'm trying to be right this year, but pick a different way. So I'm going to go with the Blue Jays. I'm going to go with the Blue Jays coming out of the AL. We're going to make some predictions here later on. I think their lineup is pretty sick themselves. Pretty good staff. You know, they added a few pieces in the offseason as well, and I think that they're ripe to take that division over the Yankees, who always seem to have some sort of issue going. You know, I don't know. I mean, like you said, Chalky, I mean, it always seems like it's going to be the Yankees' year, and you know they spend the most money. They have the names, they have the judges, and the Stantons and everything. But I just think Toronto's a better team on paper, so I'm going to pick Toronto to win the East and the Yankees to finish second. The one team that I think will get back into the playoffs this year in the Central is the White Sox. I'm going to pick the White Sox to win the Central Division. There's a couple players on the team that they got hit a little bit with the injury bug last year, and if they stay healthy and they're young players, and you know they're on the team the whole year, I think they're a better team than Cleveland or Minnesota. And the team that I think could make the playoffs that did not make the playoffs last year, another team that you say, why don't they ever make the playoffs? They got some star power, but they never do it, and that's the Angels. Of course, Trout's been hit with the injury of last years. Of course, they have Ohtani in a walk year, and Rendon has he even barely played since he's signed over there. But apparently he's
forgot all about him. I forgot about Rendon.
Yeah, right. Because he was a beast. He was a beast for the Nationals, but he hasn't really panned out in LA. I think if there's ever going to be a year where they have to win to be able to see if they can re-sign Ohtani, this might be the year. And if that's any motivation, maybe they make the playoffs. So I think they're like a World Series contender. No, but I do think that they can sneak in. So I'm taking Toronto, Yankees, Chicago, Houston, the Angels, and yeah, throw another team in there. I guess you can pick between like Cleveland or Tampa Bay.
All right, so let's move on here. Amika, I know you have a couple of questions. Let's cut it to 3 because we don't want to run long time. We got to get to our prop bets and stuff. So I would cut it down to 3. So shoot whenever you.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's only 3 that I would bring up that we've talked about anyway. But let's just talk about a couple players. So what rookie from last year do you feel ripe to take the biggest leap? AL or NL, doesn't really matter.
I mean, I'll go. I'll give you 3 guys. In the National League, I know I'm kind of going against your rule here, but I think there's 3 shortstops. I think, Stott for the Phillies is no longer a shortstop, but I think Stott's Stott's a really nice player. I think he's going to make a jump. I love his at bats. Guy works the count, gets a lot of pitches thrown. I really like Stott. I think he's going to make a jump this year. O'Neal Cruz for the Pirates. I think that guy has star potential, and he's just a freak to watch. He's 6'7" or 6'8". He's a fun guy to watch. I think he could turn into a star this year. And then I think Vaughn Grissom, another shortstop for the Braves. I think that guy is just a pure hitter. I think he can make a big jump and kind of lessen the impact of them losing Swanson. American League, I really don't have anybody. Maybe Bobby Witt, maybe Bobby Witt Jr. But I'm mostly National League. It's my guys.
Bobby Witt was my thought with for the AL for sure. I mean, I think the reigning rookies of the year both have star potential already. I mean, one was an all-star, and Harris put up great numbers, came up in June. So it's easy to pick them, but they could certainly keep developing further. And the other guy, I was trying to go off the top of my head who else was in the NL, and just looking real quick. Strider had a great year, and he might continue to get better. I mean, he could really turn into maybe a top 5 pitcher. But I'll throw you a bone here, Meeker. Lodolo. He looked good at times last year, and he could take another step forward. But those are just a couple guys Jason didn't mention.
I know Meeker.
I would just paint an easy answer. The easy answer is pay for me from the Astros. I mean, that guy looks like a star in the making. He's like a young A-Rod when I watch him play. And he's only going to get better. He's only going to get bigger, and he's much stronger, and he's going to be a problem
You
for
sound like
quite a while in the AL, in the AL
C3PO
West.
or R2. You sound like R2D2 tonight, Meeker. I don't know what's going on with your connection. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I want a little bit of talk. Do you hear me?
I heard C3PO.
You're good. Keep going.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, if you can hear me, how do you think the rule changes in baseball are going to affect the game? Pitch clock, no shift, bigger bases, limited pickoffs. What do you think?
I really don't know, and that's what I was, when we're starting to look at like picks like this and like fantasy guys, who's is a pitch clock going to shake somebody up more than somebody else. I don't know. I mean, I think if you're somebody that doesn't want to spend 3+ hours on a game, you'll enjoy it. I mean, my grandfather passed away back in 2012, but for about a decade plus, he used to tell me how, Robin Roberts got the ball back, threw it right back, 2-hour game tops. So he would love the new rules to be able to watch a game in, 2.25, 2.5 every night. I feel like they're kind of forcing it a little bit, but I mean, there's no change that I'm against, like, for sure. I think that keeping the hitters from stepping out of the box for 30 seconds, whatever. I mean, that really was ridiculous. I don't know that it'll have, I mean, just from a viewing impact, I think people might enjoy it more. From an actual in-game impact, I don't know. I mean, if they really wanted to cut down on time, they could take some of those 5-minute commercials out of the World Series, but that makes them money, whereas these other ones don't cost them anything. So
I absolutely love it. I think it is so great. Meeker, you could kind of speak for this too. We remember Steve Carlton used to get the ball and throw the ball and get the ball and throw the ball. Like, these guys didn't mess around back in the day. And I remember Carlton having shutout games that went under 2 hours. They were like an hour and 55 minutes and stuff like that. So I think it's tremendous. I think it'll be great in the World Series when games start at 8:45. At least maybe it'll be over before 11:30 at night. I mean, that's tremendous. And the guys will get used to it. I love seeing guys getting balls or strikes called on them in the preseason because who cares? But guess what? It'll teach them a lesson. And I think it's unbelievable. I think it's great. I think I hear people complaining about it. I mean, come on, you really want to sit through a game? There is one, and I don't know if I sent it to you guys. There is one clip out there where Jose Altuve hit an inside the park home run. Okay, they replayed that clip 7 times. Him hitting an inside the park home run and running around the bases before a guy threw 2 pitches. Literally, it was 7 times. The guy would, whoever the pitcher was, I forget who it was, he stepped off, and then he faked the throw to first, and then he stepped off, and then the batter called timeout. This happened, literally. They played Altuve running around the bases 7 times before he threw 2 pitches. So that crap's got to go. I love it. And then as far as how it's going to impact the gameplay, I think you're going to see a lot of stolen bases now. Because not only are the bases bigger, so obviously, it's a shorter distance between the bases, you can't throw over 1 million times. So if you throw over once, I think you can only throw over 1 more time, right? And then basically the 3rd time, you either pick the guy off or you get second base. So, you throw over once, now you could take a big lead and, you could steal bases. So it's going to bring stolen bases into the game.
The one thing I will be interested to see is, when they're enforcing these rules, whether it's the pitch clock or being out of the box too long or whatever, does it end up like we see in other sports where sometimes it's like if it happens in the 4th quarter or the 3rd period or overtime, there's a little more leeway? How close are you enforcing that? There was, one of the preseason or one of the spring training games, like guy had bases loaded in the 9th, and they said he took too long, and so they rung him up, and that was the end of the inning. Like they went to extra innings. Like, is somebody going to want to do that in the regular season or Game 7 of the World Series if it's not blatant. I think that's where you have some. It's ripe for controversy if it seems to be adjudicated in a way that's not even or at least consistent, especially at different parts of the game. But it'll be interesting to see.
You know what we could do to kind of, excuse me, maybe lessen the I guess not the impact, but I guess the onus being on the umpires, make it a buzzer. If it hits the buzzer, if the batter's not in the box and ready by the time the buzzer goes off, it's automatic.
I mean, that's what I've been saying for years, that the NFL should have with the play clock, because it's like the umpire has to watch it go 0 and then look at the quarterback to see if the ball was snapped. Like, it should be something that goes off, and if the light hits buzzer. Like the NBA shot clock, if something lights up and if the ball's not snapped or not in the box, like that's it. That way you're not making a judgment call and delay and everything else. Right. So, I guess you don't want a big light or buzzer going off if somebody might be stepping in. But I mean, if there's something that goes off in the umpire's ear or something like that says, okay, as soon as you hear that boom, I don't know, but it's something they haven't had to do before as far as the timing thing, right? So there's going to be some trial and error for sure, I would expect.
I'm interested to see how the shift affects the game. And I think that, batting averages are they're projected to go up by like 15 to 20 points this year, which I think is great for the game. Again, you get these left-handed power hitters that come up that basically know that if they don't hit the ball in the gap or hit the ball out of the park, they're out. And now I think the mentality of the hitter is going to change to a point where he doesn't really need to feel that way. Does it change that? Are we going to get less home runs because of it? Maybe. Are we going to get a better brand of baseball? That's what I'm hoping. I mean, I've seen, I don't know, maybe a handful of spring training games this year, and it seems to kind of be working in that direction, in my opinion. But it could make some guys a lot more money, when you really think about it, because if a guy goes into a free agent year coming off of a 240 average, maybe he hits 30 home runs, but instead of hitting 240, now he's 260, 275. I mean, how the team's going to look at that? Are they going to look at that a little bit more favorably for contracts? So it might be really good for the hitters. How it's going to affect the pitchers, they might have to pitch a little differently. Where they don't come in on all the time on left-handed hitters. They might have to, try and pepper the outside part of the plate, especially against lefties.
Well, I think what you're going to see is they're still going to try and do a shift. You're going to see teams on guys that just are dead pull hitters. They're going to put the left fielder as a softball outfielder in right field, and you're going to make them third baseman kind of play, third base / left field, and that's how
you got to make them pay for that, though. I mean, I think it's easier to make a team pay for that in a situation you're talking about versus the normal shift.
But they never did. There was not a third baseman, and hardly anybody laid down bunts down the third base line. Hardly anybody slapped the ball down there. They're just not.
When you're taking an outfielder, I think it's a little different.
Well, you could shade the center fielder over a little more, so like he.
Yeah, because you're worried about the ball getting by, going all the way to the fence in situations like that, which would normally be a single.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think you're going to see they're going to figure out a way to still shift.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think it's going to be good for the game too. I love it.
I think it's a good idea. I just think they're going to try and work around it.
All right, so we're going to talk some bets, some props.
Yeah. Let's move to our prop bet segment. And I'll kind of lay out what I have going on. You guys could kind of give whatever you have. I have some over-unders and wins that I'm going to give. And then I have my division winner and my league winner, and I'll have those odds for those teams. And then once we get through those, then we'll jump to the real prop bets, or the home runs, your MVPs, your Cy Youngs and stuff. So I guess we'll start with Chalky. Chalky, do you have any wins over unders or division, whatever you have as far as teams are concerned?
Yeah. So as far as I would say bet at this price, the only division winner I would say is a White Sox, a plus 240. That's the one, value if you want to call it that.
Yep.
As far as over under on wins, so this one's not I know we usually talk DraftKings, FanDuel's got a little bit better numbers on this, so they have different brackets. So they have their basic over under, but then you can get alternate, I guess if you want to call it that. So I have an alternate with Baltimore, which is 80 or more wins. That's plus 145. I think their regular number was either 76 maybe something like that.
76 and a half, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So 80 or more at plus 145. And then the Braves with their straight over under, which was 94 and a half, I think. Yeah. The over on that, I think could be close. It might be a 95 win team, but I think they're in that 95 to 100 win bracket. And then World Series, I said the Yankees. I was trying to talk myself into Seattle at 20-1. I couldn't quite get there, but I would take the Padres maybe at plus 950. I think we talked about them earlier, but they could mash their way through, and if their pitching holds up enough, and if Musgrove stops dropping weights on his foot, I think they might be able to put it together this year after getting to the championship series last year.
All right, Mika, what do you got?
I don't think DraftKings allows you to parlay these things, but if you find a site that allows you to with the win totals, I'm going to take Arizona over 74.5 wins. I think they're an improved team. Got some exciting young players on the team, a couple good pitchers. They're not ready to make the playoffs yet, but 74.5 seems like a low number considering they won 74 games last year. I already mentioned that I think the White Sox are going to win the Central, and their total is 83, so I really like that. And I told you that the Angels have a shot at making the playoffs this year, and their win total is 81.5, so I'm going to go over that. The one team that I think is going to struggle this year, which, a team that's always been a pretty good team, is the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox total is 78.5. I'm going to go under. That's the only under that I'm going to mention on the podcast. Unless we were picking every team, but I'm just going to pick the ones I really like. So Red Sox under, and then I agree with Chalky on the Pods to win the World Series at 950. I think they're pretty good odds, and I think if you take that now, you're probably better off than waiting a couple months from now. Once we see that they're probably controlling that division, so I agree with Chalky there. One other thing I'll mention is there is a DraftKings special division trifecta where you pick the first three in the division. And I like the Central in the AL with the White Sox, Cleveland, and Minnesota, and that's a plus 650 if you bet that.
All right, nice. All right, so I'll start with my win over unders, and I'll start with the only under I have, and that's the Dodgers. 95.5. I don't see them winning 96 games. I just don't see it. They lost Trey Turner, they lost Justin Turner. Their infield is not as good. I don't think their outfield's that good, and they lost Walker Buehler for the year. They really don't have a solid closer. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I know Vegas usually isn't that wrong, but I don't see it. And then I'll give you my overs. So we all mentioned the Padres. I see them over 93.5 wins. Again, I see the Phillies over 88.5 wins. I think they win 90 games. The Brewers. I see the Brewers winning more than 85.5 games. I think they're going to win that Central. I'll get to that in a second. And then, like you guys said, Arizona. I think Arizona's a good young team. I really like I like Zach Gallen a lot. Get to that in a little bit. So I like Arizona to win over 74.5 games. And the only over in the American League is, like Meeker has mentioned, the White Sox. I think they're going to bounce back and they're going to win over 83.5 games. My division winners, again, I'm a homer, but I'm gonna try the Phillies at a plus 370. I think that's great value in them. I'm going to take Milwaukee at plus 160 to win the Central, and then the Padres at plus 125. I think is great value for the National League West. American League, I'm going to take the Blue Jays to win at plus two. I think it's plus 215. White Sox at plus 240, great value. And, Astros at minus 180. I know it's minus. I know it's chalk, but they're not losing that division. There's just no way. And then if you go to the league odds, the Phillies again, plus 850 to win the National League. The Padres at plus 475 to win the National League. So I bet both of those already. The Blue Jays plus 650 to win the American League. The White Sox at plus 1,700 to win the American. The Astros plus 310. Great value there. World Series, just the same teams that I just mentioned. Phillies plus 1,700, Padres plus 950, Blue Jays plus 1,300, and White Sox plus 3,500, and of course the Astros plus 600. So those are my team bets. Let's get into the player prop bets. And I'll start with Meeker. Meeker, give us your prop bets for players. Anything you have going on?
Yeah, so I took a look at the MVP for the National League and just took a couple guys. I mean, they're not chalk, but they're also not like the shortest odds. So taking Austin Riley at plus 1,500 to win the MVP, and alongside that, I'm going to take Manny Machado. I think if there's anyone in that lineup that could possibly win MVP, it might be him. Given that some other guy, Tatis, is going to be out for a little while, and if this team gets to the World Series and wins the NL, I think he's kind of the leader, quote unquote, of that team, and he's always puts up the numbers. So I think it might be his time. Plus, he also plays an awesome third base. So I'm going to take Machado at plus 1,500. In the AL, I went a little bit long here, and that's Luis Robert, or Robert, whatever you want to call him. Some people call him Robert. Some people call him Robert. He's a plus 4,000. He missed some time last year. Apparently, he's one of the best fielding outfielders in all of baseball. And he's a big dude, and he can hit some home runs. And if he plays a full season, he's plus 4,000. I think it's good value for a guy like that, because I think the White Sox will make the playoffs and win the division. And then a guy that was up for, I guess the finalist for MVP last year, Jose Ramirez from Cleveland. He's a plus 1,700, and I'm gonna take a flyer on that. You guys want to do your MVP, or you want me to keep going?
Chalky, what do you got for MVP?
So the player I was interested in for NL was Tatis, but his odds were lower than I was expecting. So he was sitting at 10-1. Machado at 12. I didn't want to take him at that, but my first instinct was to go with Tatis. I just, at 10-1, being a lower price than Machado after missing a year and being in a pretty good lineup, like I think you put the numbers up, but that's not a price I want to take. That middle group or I say middle group when you look at the whole list, but those double-digit guys in the NL, Goldschmidt, Riley, even Alonso at 15, 16-1. I think those are all shots, reasonable shots one could take. There's some crazy numbers in here. I think I don't think anybody in the Dodgers is going to play that well. Soto's the favorite, so that's the other guy in the Padres I forgot to mention. But you got these teams that have like 3 or 4 guys grouped in the top. You really got to set yourself, ahead of everybody else on that kind of team, I think, to get there. And I don't know that anybody will. AL, I don't have a recommended bet because I think it's going to chalk out. I think they're going to look to give, like if Ohtani puts another good year together, like they're going to look to give him 1 to 2 awards, right? So it might end up being MVP, especially if they get there. And then it's the playoffs, as Mika was saying. Trout, again, could get back there. I don't think he's gonna have a bad year, but I'm anti-Judge on a different bet that we'll get to. So I think 7-1, I wouldn't touch that as it is. And Rodriguez on Mariners at 9-1, I thought was lower than I would like to take. So I don't have a lot of strong plays with the MVPs because I think there's short prices on some of the guys that I would like for the most part.
Yeah, and I'll stick with the American League. I think, like you said, I think it's going to be slightly chalky. I don't think it's going to be Judge. I think Trout at 8-1, I think is value. He stays healthy. And he put up sick numbers last year, and he missed a ton of games. He's still the best player probably in baseball. I think Vladimir Guerrero is going to bounce back and have a big year. I like him at 13-1, and I'm going to like him in another stat coming up soon. But I like Guerrero at 13-1, and these are all on FanDuel. I found FanDuel had tremendous odds, versus DraftKings or any other site for these prop bets. National League, I'll give you 4 guys. Most of them are chalky. I think Acuna is going to bounce back at 10-1. I think he's got a shot to win the MVP. I know he's one of the favorites, but he's going to have a bounce back year, I think. I think Trey Turner at 13-1 at the top of the Phillies lineup. He's going to score. He's got to score 120 runs in that lineup if he stays healthy. He's going to steal a ton of bases. He's going to have 200 hits. 13-1. This is a FanDuel as well. I'm going to take a shot on Turner. Meeker mentioned Austin Riley at 16-1. Again, I got 16-1. This is on Bet365. I think he's got a real shot. And then Olsen for the Braves at 33-1. I thought that was value on him, also on Bet365. So those will be my MVP bets. I'm going to jump to Cy Young, and I'll start with those, and I'll start in the American League. Dylan Cease, he's chalk. He's one of the top 3 or 4 choices, but 12-1 on Bet365. I think he's got a big shot to win Cy Young. McClanahan for Tampa Bay at 16-1. I got that on FanDuel. Again, it's one of the favorites, but he's a solid pitcher. I think he's got a shot. Javier for the Astros. We all saw what he did to the Phillies in the World Series. The guy's got crazy stuff. At 25-1 on Bet365, I think it's sick value. And I actually think Ohtani's got a better chance to win Cy Young than MVP. I'm going to take a shot on him at 12-1 on DraftKings to win Cy Young, because his pitching stats were just as impressive as his hitting stats, which is insane. Jump to the National League. I know it's chalk, but Alcantara, I mean, that guy is just so good. He's plus 550. He is the favorite. He's probably going to win. If he doesn't, I'll give you 3 other guys. A homer pick with Wheeler at 16-1 on FanDuel. Zach Gallen, who I mentioned before, 20-1 on Bet365. I think guy's a really good pitcher. I thought he had a shot last year to win Cy Young. I think he's going to have a shot this
40 consecutive shutout innings or something like that last year? That's crazy.
Chalky would probably know, I'm sure. And then another chalky pitcher is Urias at 20-1. I think, he just wins a ton of games every year. He also had a big shot last year to win Cy Young, and I think he's got a shot again. I'll go to Meeker. What do you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick one in each league. So my Cy Young for the American League is Framber Valdez. Again, an Astro is going to have plenty of opportunity to win a lot of games. Pitch great against the Phils. Got to see him. Obviously, he's a great pitcher. So he's 1,500. I'm going to take him. And in the National League, I'm going to go Yu Darvish. I think he's obviously the ace of the team that I think is going to go to the World Series and perhaps win it. And his odds aren't bad. We're at 22-1 on Yu Darvish. So those are my 2 picks for Cy Young. I didn't add anything to it, but I like your Cease pick. I think that's got a definite shot too.
Chalky?
AL, I had Alek Manoah at 12-1 right now. The Blue Jays. DeGrom at 5-1 is a favorite. Good luck with that. Good luck with him finishing the season in one piece or pitching enough games. But so I think that gives you value on a couple different guys there. But I'll take Manoah at 12-1. NL, I had 2 guys. Max Fried also at 12-1 right now, and the aforementioned Urias at 20-1. Looking now at FanDuel.
So I have home run leaders, and this is overall. This is not national, split by national and American. I could give mine, or if you guys did any home runs, I'll let you guys go first.
Yeah, I just picked one in these categories you have. I just picked who I thought had the best odds, and maybe not who I exactly think would lead the league, but they have good odds. So in home runs, I took Matt Olson. He's at 1,900. I think it's a good bet.
But he's at 2,800.
He's a bomber.
is at 2,800 if you use FanDuel. So that's where I'm
So,
telling you.
so I think I'll be downloading that app after we're done
the
here.
odds are
Stick my
insanely
stick my
different.
$20 on that.
Exactly. Chalky?
I didn't pick anything for league leaders,
Okay.
but the one home run bet I do have is this was a DraftKings. They got an over/under on Aaron Judge, 45.5 this year. I took under. I think they juiced both sides, so it's a -115 on the under. I think he'll get to 40, but looking at his career stats, and he's had injuries before, he's not going to hit 60 again, most likely, but he could hit 42, 43, which would be a winning bet here. So I'm going under on Judge for at 45.5.
So I teased the home runs by ballpark. I'll just give you the top 12 real fast. So Cincinnati was first, Milwaukee was second, Yankees third, Toronto fourth, Colorado fifth, Washington sixth. That's interesting. Texas seventh, the Dodgers eighth, Angels ninth. I believe it says Seattle was 10th, Atlanta 11th, and believe it or not, Citizens Bank 12th Park was 12th.
That is pretty surprising. That's
Right.
surprising.
Telling you.
Yeah.
So I spread around the home run leaders because I just find that to be a fascinating bet. I'll go quickly. Guerrero at 12-1, bet 365. Ohtani at 19-1 on FanDuel, crazy value. Acuna at 30-1 on bet 365.
Like that one.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, a little home cooking with Schwarber at 12-1, bet 365. Corey Seager at 100-1 on FanDuel. If you look at, I did home runs per at bat too. His home runs per at bat, he was 17th last year. He had a home run every 18 at bats. So 100-1, I'll take a shot. Trout at 10-1. Again, his home runs per at bat were sick last year. He hit 40 home runs and he played like not even 3/4 of the season. Tyler O'Neill at 200-1 on FanDuel. Guy who hit almost 40 home runs a couple years ago. My main bet, though, is Rowdy Tellez. And you could get him at 70-1 to lead the league in home runs on FanDuel. He was 6th in home runs per at bat last year. Believe it or not, Rowdy Tellez. So he's in his prime. He plays in a ballpark, like I said, that was second most home runs last year in that ballpark. So it's probably a home run hitting ballpark. 71, I'm all over that. Marcus Semien at 200-1. Guy hit 43 home runs 2 years ago. I'll take 200-1 on FanDuel. And then Olsen at 28-1. I also threw that in on FanDuel. I did most wins for pitcher. Meeker, did you do anything on wins?
Yeah, I mean, I had again, it's all major leagues and not national and AL
exactly.
divided.
Yep.
So I just took two guys, both in the American League too. One is Dylan Cease, again going back to Chicago and thinking they're the best team in the Central, may make the playoffs, and he's a stud. That certainly has a shot of happening at 18-1. And my other guy is Kevin Gossman for the Blue Jays. So he's 18-1 as well. Again, I think these two teams I'm high on this year. So, if you're going to be high on a team, you pick the ace to win the most games, and that's the strategy that I'm going with. Both of them have pretty good odds though, too, at 18.
Yeah, I did 5. I did Valdez, your guy, who you have for Cy Young. He was 16-1 on Bet 365. My guy Javier was 30-1 on DraftKings. Dylan Cease was 20-1 on Bet 365. Zach Gallen is 100-1 on Bet 365.
That's surprising.
Yeah, that's great value. And Wheeler was 20-1 on Bet 365. Wheeler stays healthy. Who knows how many wins he could get with that lineup? I have 2 more. I have strikeouts and I have stolen bases. I'll just give you those real fast, and if you guys have any, just throw them out after. Hunter Green for strikeouts, 60-1 on FanDuel. I think that's tremendous value. Dylan Cease again, 10-1 on FanDuel, and then Spencer Strider at 10-1 on FanDuel for strikeouts. Stolen bases, because I think there's going to be a lot of stolen bases this year. I did Cedric Mullins at plus 850 on DraftKings. I did Trey Turner at plus 1400 on DraftKings, and I did Jazz Chisholm at plus 2200 on Bet 365. Do you guys have anything in those regards?
I agree with your Trey Turner bet on the stolen bases. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities, and he's at 14 where I looked at. You got better odds, obviously, on a different site, but
No, he's 14.
and the K's, and the K's, Nick Lodolo. Why not pick Nick? Let's be a homer and pick Nick. Well, it's a homer because he's on my fantasy team. For you people that don't know, at 35-1, guy's got electric stuff. And if he just pitches the whole season, doesn't have any injuries, he can get into that mid 200s, I think, in strikeouts this year.
All right. I mean, that's all I had. Chalky, did you have anything else in prop bets?
I had rookie of the years for both leagues. National League, speaking of fantasy teams, I have 5 of the top 6 choices on mine, apparently, as far as FanDuel goes. So, and 6 of the top 8 until last night when I dropped one of them. But I'm going to go with the one I don't have in the top 6, and that's Senga, if I'm saying that right, on the Mets. These players that have played a while in Japan can, they got a leg up on some of the, 20-something-year-olds coming up from the minors. So he's plus 850 right in the middle right now. He's co-third choice with Vargas from LA. And then in the AL, I looked at Volpe on 11-1. It's not guaranteed he's starting the year with the team, it sounds like, but he's getting a lot of hype. He plays in New York. If he gets time and he plays well, he's going to get, TV time. He's going to get a lot of hype. He'll get votes. So 11-1, he's a little bit further down on the board than some of the favorites. I think the kid from Baltimore is a favorite right now, but at 11-1, if he breaks or comes up very early, if he lives up to the hype, he'll have a good chance.
I thought Jordan Walker had a shot. And I believe I got him at like plus 750 or plus 850 a week or two ago.
Yeah, FanDuel now, he's co-favorite with Carroll, both at 4-1.
Yeah, so I got some value. That was my only rookie of the year bet. Meeker, anybody?
No, I mean, if I was gonna think, if I was going to win rookie of the year, I would go with Corbin Carroll. So I mean, I know that's the chalky bet, but I think that's who wins it in the National League. Bobby Miller might be a play though. Might think about Bobby Miller if he gets enough starts.
39-1.
He's going to with the that staff's got some injury problems written all over it.
I mean, if
I'll be happy if he does.
If he performs, he's going to. But all right, so that will conclude episode number 44 of Broad Street
Before
Hustle.
we're done, we have to do one pretty important thing. We haven't picked our World Series.
Oh, well, I did. I gave my prop bet World Series, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was a prop bet. I didn't think you were picking them.
Well, I would, if I'm putting money on them, I am picking them. But go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to take San Diego over Atlanta in the NLCS. I'm going to take Toronto over the Yankees in the ALCS. And I'm going to take San Diego over Toronto in the World Series this year. That's my pick.
So San Diego's your pick. Chalky?
San Diego.
Who are they playing?
I might be the new Chalky. I'm going to pick the Houston Astros. I just think they're better than everybody. I don't know, but all right, Meeker,
I'll go with the San Diego Toronto. I'll see what I can get a play on that. Which means the Yankees will probably win now that I jumped off them. But yeah.
Phillies and Yankees.
I'll see what San Diego. Oh God, it'd be unbearable to lose the Yankees again. But yeah. Toronto's probably a pretty good odds matchup right now.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I really don't know who gets there in the National League. I think legitimately the Phillies could. I think the Padres could. I think the Braves could. I don't really think any other team will. I think it'll be one of those three. I don't know. I mean, pick the one with the best odds, which would be Phillies. So maybe it's Phillies Astros again. Who knows? But anyway, Meeker, can we now conclude?
We now can. We have our picks recorded on tape.
Gotcha.
I have a spot play.
For those of your kids from the 1970s.
We can't conclude yet then, Chalky. Go ahead. What do you got?
So I was, the football world was set afire this week when Derek Carr chose the New Orleans Saints and vaulted them into the favorite to win that division. So there's a team I was looking at, and then the hype was, well, is Jackson going to go here? And then they said, no, he's not. But as far as value in the South, those Atlanta Falcons, they need a quarterback. Who knows who it's going to be? But they were a 7-10 team last year with a lot of close losses in that first half of the season. The Saints are going to be much better with Carr, I think, but Atlanta at plus 380 right now. That interested me because they maybe, they might not get Jackson, but they could make a move for one of these other guys, and they played well. So I think there's value there as it stands at the moment, but before free agency opens.
I kind of thought there's value on Carolina if they get a quarterback, but
I mean, that's the thing with the rest of that division. Okay, so like until Carr signed, there was nobody had a quarterback. And now, the Bucks are at 5-1 at the longest shot. Even if they bring in a quarterback, they have issues. But
I don't want any parts of them.
Carolina will be interested to see if they draft high or they bring another bridge guy in. See what Reich wants to do. Matt Ryan's available, I guess, but we'll see. And Wentz.
Yeah, I mean, I would bring in the biggest bridge guy in the world is Garoppolo. Bring him in and draft a quarterback. But
I think Garoppolo's going to go to the
Raiders.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll go there. But all right, I think we now can conclude episode number 44 of Broad Street Hustle.
Wait, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. You can look for us on most of the major listening platforms, and we are now on YouTube. I believe Chalky will get us out there again on YouTube at some point in the near future. So again, thanks to.
Show a picture of your cast on YouTube this week.
You'll see it. You'll see it when it comes up. I already have something in mind. So.
Maybe put Fire Marshal Bill or something like that as your picture.
I have I had something I was thinking about.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for everyone for listening. And we will see you again next week.
Phillies.
Later.